Why does the Earth currently have very hot and very cold places? The Earth is a system that has a natural balance, and if man does not intervene, this balance remains. On Earth we have reserves that can warm and reserves that can cool. The sun illuminates the Earth, and plants capture this energy and convert it into chemical energy that is stored on the planet, and this energy can be converted into heat. But the polar regions reserve ice, and that ice can reduce the planet's temperature. So, there is a temperature equilibrium. The ideal point would be 12 to 13 degrees of the Earth's average temperature, but we are at a value of 15 degrees. Many regions that formerly had a mild temperature now have changes in heat and cold, usually dry. Regions that 30 years ago had moist mists that appeared at dawn no longer do. This is due to the increase in temperature, and the quest to balance the temperature by the planet's own system. The materials have an aggregate heat system that is measured by the formula Q as the amount of heat, equal to the mass m of a material times C, which is a specific value of the material we are using, and that is multiplied by temperature variation we call the temperature delta. But when ice melts, it has a latent heat, which is the energy that is linked to the change in the physical state of matter. Its formula is the same Q as the amount of heat equal to m of the mass of the material, times the L of latent heat. Let's imagine that we have a ton of water from an iceberg at minus 15 degrees Celsius. That would cool a cube around a football stadium to 30 degrees Celsius. What would the final temperature be? The specific heat of ice C of water is 0.5 calories per gram per degree Celsius. The latent heat of melting ice is 80 calories per gram. The specific heat of liquid water is 1 calorie per gram per degree Celsius. Let's assume that a football stadium is 185 meters wide and 185 meters deep. So let's have a 185 meter cube around the field. The density of air is 1,201 kilograms per cubic meter. So the volume of this cube is 185 cubic meters. Thus, this cube weighs about 7,600 tons. The specific heat of constant pressure air is 0.239 calories per gram per degree Celsius. Sometimes people think that the analysis of global warming is just an opinion, but it is not an opinion. It is an analysis with mathematical foundations and scientific bases. Typically, denialism denies learning and study, and so denies reality. To deny reality is to risk your life. But now we have all the information to build the equation to figure out the final temperature when a ton of ice on the iceberg melts. Thus, we have that the sum of the amount of heat in a closed system is equal to 0. Thus, a ton of water at minus 15 degrees changes to 0 degrees, melts with a latent heat, and the liquid balances with the air temperature. And so we set up the equation. See that many people have failed to understand mathematically what is happening. In fact, what happens is that ice cools the air and the air heats the water until they reach a temperature. Solving the calculation, a ton of iceberg lowers less than 0.1 degrees Celsius. Note that when ice is melted to cool the environment, almost nothing is cooled. Suppose we wanted to cool from 35 degrees Celsius to 25 degrees, how much iceberg would it take? So, to drop 10 degrees from 35 to 25 we need almost 162 tons of iceberg. So when the planet heats up in the north, causing deaths from high temperatures, the southern ice melts to balance the planet, and it cools the south, but it has a consequence. Large amounts of ice from the poles melts. And when that ice melts, there comes a time when the system can no longer cool down, and then the temperature gets too hot. That's why the cold in the south is great when the heat in the north is high. And this reverses when it's summer in the south. But the ice is melting, and the risk is that the heat will increase, and the cold will not be able to balance it. This is the problem of global warming, destroying the planet's thermal balance, which generates an ecological system with a balanced temperature. Man is now receiving the consequences of his actions. Of course, the poorest suffer much more, but the rich are losing economically and socially. And soon they'll be talking about ecology, not because they want the best for everyone, but because there's a drop in profits. But then, it's late.
If you are looking for more content from different areas, visit the reformadorstad.com website. News and detailed content can be found with system of research and organization of text and video.